go do that. I'll go apologize or something like that. Um,
That's helpful yesterday.
yeah, but no, I was saying that it's like for me and you, it seems like to a certain extent I try to mess with the any, but I don't do that as much with you. It's more like I find myself trying to entertain Taylor more, whereas for you, I'll try to be helpful in the FE sense because I feel like you're looking for FE more being.
Well, I'm accustomed
Yeah.
to getting that from INFJs.
Uh-huh.
See, Taylor has a bad experience with INFJs in the real world. I
Hmm.
have good experience with INFJs in the real world with the one I know until
Right.
recently. You know,
Yeah.
until I always had a great experience with him, and he always helped in that regard. He did what you did yesterday. You know,
Uh-huh.
so I'm used to following instructions from INFJs in certain areas because I just trust them inherently. Like I know that you're not trying to get me somehow, you know?
Uh,
I don't know exactly why it's the case, but I guess it's because I naturally trust NI DOMs.
hmm.
Socionics says NE DOMs naturally trust NI DOMs. So that means that it's just easy to hear that from you.
Hmm.
Why is it a concern with other types? I position myself in the world in in an adversarial frame, mostly in a vulnerability frame. Like, I don't think anybody's out to get me. I'm not paranoid like that. That's not what adversarial means. I just mean like uh, that I'm aware of possible vulnerabilities. I don't want anybody to be able to move me based on my vulnerabilities. That means I don't want to be somebody else to be able to go like, oh, I'll hold this up, and then Eric won't blah.
Huh. So like the Denny's thing. Let's wait until he goes to Denny's and then we'll try to argue with him.
Right, like that, yeah. So then that would be a vulnerability that I would have to consider or something. But except it's not really because that's not. But it's that's exactly what I mean. Though, is that sort of thing. That's not a good example of it. That sort of thing for sure. It sounds boring to go after vulnerabilities. I mean, I don't think I go after vulnerabilities. I think I am generally cautious with others' vulnerabilities, uh, and I'm concerned about their well-being. Sometimes I play a little rough, but
Yeah, I was gonna say at least what I've seen from you. I don't know if this is necessarily an ENTP thing, but what I've seen from you and Taylor is that it's not necessarily going after vulnerabilities. It's not passing up an opportunity to express your rightness is more the focus. If you have an opportunity to express your rightness, goddamn, let's get into that opportunity. Let's not.
why waste it?
Right.
Why
That's a
not cash it
perfectly.
in?
It's like George Costanza from that episode of Seinfeld where the like the pastry is just sitting on top of the trash. He just decides, you know what? It's intact. There's nothing on it. I don't see the big deal. Let's just to other people it's taboo, but he's like, there's a perfectly good pastry just sitting there. Who's gonna pass that up? And other people are like, Eric, Eric, why would you do that? And it's like, but it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it.
um, so regarding your point about the duels and such, I would say that if we look at it from a DCHN perspective, which
Uh-huh.
is are you that model, which is the Socionics thing, says your subtype could either your dominant function is like you get like bonus points on one of your functions. Basically, that's your subtype. Okay, you're like you get a power boost on your first, second, third, or fourth function, and if it's your dominant function, then you're dominant type. If it's your creative function, then you're creative type. If it's your third function, then you're
Normalizing?
normalizing, and if it's your fourth function, you're harmonizing. So in other words,
See, harmony.
for me it would be SI. If I were to be SI heavy, I'd be a harmonizing ENTP because I'd be trying to be less like my type and more like regular people. If I'm a dominant, which I think I am probably, then I'm trying to be more like my already dominant cognitive function, which means I just want to be like, yeah, any all the time.
You want to become the archetype of any. You just want to be walking in and just show up.
Right. So I think I'm a dominant subtype. I think Taylor's a creative subtype. I think Nick is a normalizing subtype. And I don't know any harmonizing ENTPs. There might be though. It might be like somebody like Callum, maybe.
What about Jay? You think he's a harmonizing?
Well,
because that motherfucker could blend in.
That would explain shit, right? Because I keep thinking he's not an ENTP. I think he's an ENFP. But then another way to think, well, but I don't know. But that would explain it though. Maybe he's a harmonizing ENTP. If you read those things on the DCHN thing, NH thing, it says like the first two creative explains Taylor perfectly. It seems to me explains it perfectly because it says in there. I'll get to your question in a second. It says in there that type is the creative will display not so much like their own type, and like, you know, for example, Taylor displays more like an ESTP in a lot of ways. And it describes exactly the fact that the creative thing that they did won't exactly be art, it'll be a hobby, yeah. It's weird. It's so fucking right on the money, the dominant and creative subtypes in that thing. I was really struck by it. Trenton sent it to me saying, this thing describes the ENTPs associated with talking with famous people, basically. And I was like, oh my god, that's nutty.
Out of the Socionics one, I figured if there were two options, intuitive or ethical, then I would prefer ethical. But I'm wondering if
I'll find the link for you.
I might be the harmonizing type. I just think harmonizing probably looks a little weirder for SE.
Here's the link.
Because a lot of times in interactions, I feel like my primary focus, I feel like really strong ethical considerations don't come up for me until there's a problem. Then I'm like, oh shit, I gotta kick into gear in terms of that. But normally I just show up and I'm like, not necessarily in an NE sort of way, but I just show up and I'm like, yeah, and I just start talking about shit.
I think that's true. You might be an SE subtype. That would make sense because you are not unwilling to do in the moment at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that may explain why you're so active for an introvert, or
right. It actually seems like in some ways. Hold on, I gotta let my dog in. I'll be right back.
Hey, it's the Virgin Mary. You want to come over here and lose that title, baby?
No, I was saying, I think part of it too is why I get so fucking distracted by stuff. Like that first video I made with the intro, when it started raining, and it's like I just had to point it out. Like it seemed like a nervous thing. Like I'm like, oh no, it's raining. I hope people don't like that. That's kind of what I do, but that was like what came after the initial thing of like me trying to say something and something else distracted me, and then I'm like, huh, like that. I'm like, oh, ha, just like back to that. But yeah,
I gotta say, I love the you and Elsie synchronized philosophizing
yeah,
part of that, where you guys are going back and forth like this.
yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
I saw that on the Raw thing, and I'm like, that's fucking amazing.
Uh, pretty sure we're the same. I'm pretty sure we're the same. Whatchamacallit, Enneagram tri-type.
Anyway, so as far as I can tell, looking at that DCNH thing, is that the ideal dual would be like me. I would have a I think it's
Probably,
a
probably want to match him up. You probably want a ISFJ who
is
was
not
focused on being the embodiment of ISFJ. Is how I imagine it.
well. I no. I think it's the um. It says here that
Do they got their own system for?
well, it says something about like which type gets along better with which type somewhere in here. I'm trying to
Uh,
find it again.
okay.
Uh, and basically, the dominant goes with either the normalizing or the harmonizing, but I can't remember which one. I think it's the normalizing. Normalizing is cool with yeah, because it says here normalizing does not strive to participate in competitive struggle, is not ambitious. This does not mean that he does not develop and grow. He fully develops and improves, but he's not trying to compete with anyone in general. Prefers to be second. And it says that normalizing calls for compliance to the rules of his own role. This is like my ex-wife. And the reason is because the normalizing one for an ISFJ, it will be prioritizing TI. And that will mean that she'll be prioritizing my way of decision making and my way of evaluating things. We're on the same page regarding that. So I think that's why it would work. Now, you might say, well, they're not referring to TI. And they're not referring to the third function like for MBTI because they're using Socionics numberings. I don't care if they're using Socionics numberings or not. It makes sense to me with the MBTI stack. So that's what I'm applying it to. I don't care if it's consistent with the model or not. It makes more sense to me that way.
Uh,
So like if I had a harmonizing type, there'd be conflict because she'd be prioritizing SI, and I'd be extra SI seeking. So it would be like on some level it would more fulfill my need, but it would be too much, uh, too much take and too much give, right? It's not, it's sort of not fair. And I mean, I'm sure I could get along fine with the harmonizing subtypes because they'll just sort of go along with everything. But uh, whereas but see, I need the normalizing subtype because I need them to put up the boundaries and say no, you don't get to invade in this area. I demand compliance to my own role, which is accepted as second, but you still need to respect that. That's what I need as a dual, a normalizing subtype of an ISFJ.
So normalizing for the dominant is what you're saying?
Right, normalizing for the dominant, and then
Creative for
harmonizing gets the creative. That's why
Okay.
Taylor needs a woman who's more submissive
the...
than I need. I need a woman who's a little more bossy. I need a woman to sort of boss me around in certain areas where I need to be bossed around in.
Mhm.
And I'm fine with that. It doesn't bother me at all. As long as it's my designated areas that this is your role to boss me around in this area, then it's fine. And that's exactly what would happen with normalizing according to this thing right there. Now, how that would work for you is if, let's say, you're I think you're FE, which would, or SE, but let's say you're FE, creative, then that would mean that you need somebody who's trying to keep Ken happy, which makes sense to me because you're kind of fussy, I suspect. I'm just saying. I'm not busting your chops. I'm just saying. Look, the creative says, easily stirred and odd duck can act in ways unusual in general and alien to his type in particular. The creative is not interested in anything besides that which is truly interesting to him, in the sense that he ignores everything else, passively or actively, including people. May actively renounce something if it hinders him personally.
Is that the creative?
Yeah.
Well, shit, I'm a creative. Because that was, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're a creative
about
subtype.
right.
Yeah, so you need a harmonizing subtype because, and I can tell you're spiny. You're fine with taking feedback and all that kind of stuff on your terms, and all that, just like it says in the thing.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know. I like that description a lot, and I think probably Sun is. I would guess you're.
Normalizing, maybe?
Yeah, I would say normalizing probably.
I feel like Sun shares sort of rationales or conclusions that he's come to in a sort of TI sort of way. Like, this is what I think about this, or, this is about that, or bring up questions. I don't know, though. You might be harmonizing. I don't know. I don't know you well enough, Sun.
I attribute his general, what's the word? Reticence. His general not being super talky to being TI heavy. Because look, what does TI do with INTPs? What does TI do with Taylor? He's less talky than I am. TI makes you less talky. Just like PI tells you the circumference of a circle. And that ends this exciting episode of Talking with Famous People. Thanks for watching. We're talking DCNH subtype Yizal. Hi, Nick.